Let's make some noise for DragCon Asia. DragCon Workroom. Yes. Hi everyone, welcome in. My name is Jer and I am the lost, forgotten Andrew's sister. This week we are talking about Drag Race Slaysian Royale episode 8, DragCon Slaysia. This episode was cute as hell, I can't lie. It felt somehow celebratory and whimsical, which I love. And it was nice to see all of the girls have a good time, rebrand themselves, and really just let loose. It makes me wish that they had done this challenge maybe at top 7 just to buff out the experiences and give us a little more variety. But I understand they probably needed this to be a smaller cast considering that it's done in the workroom and there's only so much space. But I would have loved to have seen what some of the others in this group had done. And then the runway this week is a redemptive one, which I think should be obligatory for every single season of All Stars. And I also wish that this theme had been episode 1's theme so we could have just seen everybody grown up. All Stars 6 started this trend of late game redemptive runways, and then UK vs. the World 2 followed along suit. I enjoy these runways because it gives us a chance to see how these queens have updated their brand. They get to show us what their drag looks like with a bigger budget, and allows them to take a moment that maybe wasn't their best in their season and show us what that could have looked like more realized. Last week, I made a solid assertion that Suki made a competitive misstep by not allowing Team International at least a slight chance to move forward by stacking the odds a little differently in the Lollapalooza. Some of y'all misunderstood what I was saying. Neither one of them are or will ever win. So if they stack the odds so that they go against others, there's a possibility that both of them could move forward if things were right. And if they both landed in the bottom 2, they'd be in no worse off position than they already were because I think Yuhua would have been out. At the time, I also mentioned that if it was Suki's goal to get Yuhua booted out, she accomplished her goal. Because I was under the impression that Team International was solidified and unionized in the same way that Team Pinoy is. And that has mostly come from things that Siam has said, talking in the past about how will it be international queens who will always be eliminated? Is it just Philippines versus them? And so I got the impression that the international queens were kind of united in the same front to get to the finale, however they needed to. That was not the case. And now with a bit more insight into her decision making, I completely think that Suki was correct in what she did, making sure that Yuhua not only was in the bottom, but also got the boot. I did not know this bombshell reveal that Yuhua had been shading Suki and saying that she was a bad performer, which is crazy in a social game where the others in the room are kind of responsible for if you're gonna go to the next episode or not. And while the assertion may not be untrue, it doesn't need to be said, especially not when there is a possibility that she could eliminate you in the future, and if you're shading her, she's got no reason to keep you. So I would like to amend my statement from last week. Suki made a good call pairing herself with Yuhua since that's the one that she kind of wanted out, so it seems like manifested it and made it happen. And honestly, if it were me, I would want a sneaky competitor out as well. This week's mini challenge is a tourist style photo shoot where they have to stand in front of a photo screen and be silly and campy. They have 15 minutes to get into their looks, and there were some interpretations of what tourists look like. Kiana and Suki were giving me the most realness of what tourists actually look like, where the others were wackadoodle. I did not understand Arizona's look at all, but that's really neither here nor there since this mini challenge was kind of inconsequential. The photographer was a little snack though, I gotta say. He was built like a triangle and I loved the fit of those clothes on him. He just looked delicious. Kiana wins the mini challenge and gets an advantage in the maxi challenge, which is to create a DragCon style booth and present it to our guests of the week, Precious Paula Nicole and Sasha Colby. I loved Precious's energy in the workroom this week. I just love this queen so much and I think she's a fun time. She looks like a good time to meet that you would leave having great memories. Unlike some other queens where when you meet them you think, I wish I hadn't ever seen them before. The challenge is to mix charisma and commerce within their own unique brands and POVs, blending style and eye-catching moments into their aesthetics, which is really the essence of what DragCon is. And of course, they are timed. Kiana chooses to snatch Suki's wig by taking her minute and giving it to herself. I don't think Kiana needed an extra minute. I think she probably could have given her minutes to others to save herself. But following my opinion from last week, if you want to get someone out, you've got to make a competitive, nasty move to make sure that they end up in the bottom, or at least do your best to, and that's by messing with who you perceive to be the weakest link in the room. And so far, Suki doesn't have any wins. She has high placements, but no Rue badges. So she competitively does seem like the one who's most likely to go home next. I did like that Suki clocked Kiana's strategy and asked her, are you just trying to get me out? Are you trying to get me in the bottom? I think she saw what was going on and she was unfazed by it because she knew what she was capable of. And I'm sure that she also could see what Kiana was doing because we're back to lip sync for your life, and Kiana is the objective strongest lip syncer in this room. So if Suki ends up in the bottom, Kiana is probably taking her out. And Kiana tried to do that by being a sneaky backstabber and taking away her minute. I really don't know who else I would have taken time away from other than maybe Venus, but even then I don't know why she would do that. She could have even followed the Arizona route and tried to sabotage her since she already started the season with sabotaging Ari. It's clear that Suki had the most experience in this very real world challenge because her booth was flawless. I loved seeing her very clear expertise in this challenge, and she was on a clear path to victory from aesthetics alone. They skip a lot of the fanfare this week and go straight into the challenge. Brigading is first to bat in ocean blue. I think this color is somehow very her, and I like the visual branding, ding ding, but I was surprised that she didn't lean more into the star thing. There were some stars in the backdrop, but I was hoping for maybe a little more. I'm not really sure how you bottle being a star and package that, but I feel like there was something more she could have done to push it. Her costuming was sort of vintage mod meets modern glam, almost superhero, and I was very into that. And it was clear to me that Briggs was trying to capture that carefree vibe of what DragCon is, but without a lot of finesse. The three of them sort of chatted, kind of as if it was a panel, then she pitched some merch. It was, I think, a well thought out concept, but a tad unfocused and a little manic. There was a Q&A, a wheel spinner, sour balls, a crazy photo. It wasn't awkward to watch, but it was just a lot. And overall, I enjoyed her attempt. And then on the runway, she is reimagining her pink pack boom look. This is one of my favorites from her season. I loved the silhouette and the colors and then her spray painting. I do kind of wish that she had done her 2-in-1 reveal look instead because I think that really could have used a rehaul since that original look was a bit of a booger chop. A bit. This look was cute though. I love that black sleek bodysuit under that super stylized, hyper rhinestoned fringy number over it. It sparkled to high heaven. It had a cool shape and it was effective for what I expect from a redemptive runway. I do think the lip sync loofah could have been shed and abandoned at the top of the runway because I do think it was a little distracting to the elaborate costuming overall, but she was solid and it was a soft slay. Suki doll is second, looking hot in Sapphire. I did think that the costume was a tad bit discombobulated and a bit messy, but it very much read like a meet and greet outfit, which is definitely what DragCon calls for. Her booth though was quite literally everything. I love the way she embellished with those bold black letters. And then the embellishments of the corners of her booth to create all that volume was visually intoxicating. Her brand is all about design, so showcasing what she could do design-wise for Precious as well as Sasha, I think was smart thinking, because it was also special and memorable. And then her La Susu was so stupid and dumb and funny. It's exactly what you're supposed to do for a challenge like this. And that is something you legitimately would probably see at a DragCon. Maybe a little more polished and finessed. In the challenge, she was giving winner energy. She marketed herself extremely well, but what I appreciated the most was the visual branding and how monochromatic it all was. She really thought about every square inch of what that booth was supposed to look like. And at DragCon, when you're walking by all these booths, you get kind of overstimulated by everything. There's so many colors and smells and sounds happening all around you that you need something eye-catching to make you stop. Back at the last DragCon I went to, there were some great visuals that made me stop and wonder what's happening here. And then others that I could have just walked by and not paid attention to. They get lost in the mix. And I think with a challenge like this, you need to have something eye-catching that makes you want to stop and peer, whether you like the queen or not. And I think Suki did that. And then on the runway, she upscaled her original entrance look. I recognized the wacky hair pretty much immediately, and I love the direction that the overall costuming went in. It was a bit bulk on bulk, which I think is what she's been doing a lot of lately, so I like clean looks. And I think the original look was super clean and structural, where this one was a lot, but I don't think it was necessarily bad. The back, however, was a little chaotic. There was a part that was riding up, didn't look like it was faceted correctly, and I can only imagine that's what that big coat was for, was to hide that segment in the back that didn't look like it was right. It was maybe the least exciting outfit on the runway, but I still liked it. And I especially enjoyed that she kept the circle motif from the original look and translated that through this dress. It was a super soft slay. Venus is next. Oh boy, was she next. I dislike this white shredded effect over the nude illusion. It was not something I would particularly stop for. If I saw a queen that was dressed like that at DragCon, I would assume that she was an assistant to the main headliner, or that she was a friend, or maybe just a local queen who was visiting, and I would not stop to find out who she was or what she was doing there. At DragCon, you might not know who everyone is, and if you look at someone and you don't see the strong visual brand of who they are, you're gonna just keep on going by. I remember a lot of the queens the last time I went were wearing things they had on the show, so people knew exactly who they were, and they tried to wear something that was most iconic. I think it would have been really effective if Venus had been dressed in her Shake, Rattle, and Rumpa look. I think that would have been eye-catching, and then maybe done some type of showcase on how to create visual illusions when you're performing or when you're out on the runway, and make that her brand. Venus's specialty is in illusion, and so that's what her whole booth should have been. I'm not trying to read the dog shit out of her or anything, but just all of this was a miss. The background was something I would walk right on by. I would look, peek, and go, ugh, and keep going. There was something that was kind of carnival vibes about it, but then there were a bunch of flat wigs on a shelf, implying to me that she was selling those wigs, but none of them were elaborately styled, so I don't know why you would sell those. And what a mistake to make a booth that looks visually like you're there to buy something and then not sell them. Like Sasha and Precious were putting on the wigs and playing with them, but Venus wasn't trying to sell them. Like, obviously, she's not going to actually get rid of these wigs. They're not really going to buy them and take them out of the workroom. I don't think they would want to. But that would be the direction to go. Try to sell these things to them. Not only that, but this is an improv challenge, which Venus is good at. And she did the carnal sin of improv, which is saying no. She was controlling, she was authoritative, not allowing them to explore at their own whim. And in a challenge like this, your guests are in control. It's essentially an open house. These are your guests and you're giving them the highlights. It was confusing, it was awkward, and throwing popcorn at them was so non sequitur. It was very strange visual branding, and also, why the heck were there airline tickets? What? To be fair, it started weird with the sweat towels. That was an odd direction to go. The whole thing was honestly a total miss, and I think it justified her bottom position. I think it's especially hard coming after Brigading, who had great energy, and then Suki, who had great visuals, and Venus, quite frankly, had neither good energy nor good visuals. And then the performance was bad. Rough. And then on the runway, she was also redoing Pink Pack Boom. The hair was bonkers, but I kind of loved it. This is the camp level that I'm always expecting from Venus Deluxe, and she delivered. I enjoyed the camp of revealing one robe into the exact same robe. It was giving Monet revealing that one tiny wig into the other bus driver wig. Unfortunately, she still hasn't nailed reveals, and I think if she had done a really spectacular reveal, I don't think it would have saved her from the bottom, but I think it would have generated at least like a ooh from Mama Pow. I was most impressed by the artistry of the pink makeup, but I was confused on what those black lines were along the wig. Was that wig glue? What was the point in that? And you could really see it in Untucked, where it looked especially awkward. I would give this a safe slay. I don't think it was bad, but it certainly didn't make me go like, ooh. And I think it was just a little too familiar to the original piece, and I think in a runway like this, you've got to have something that makes it look upscaled. Arizona is next in the challenge and is wearing this beautiful luxurious creamsicle orange. I liked her speakeasy a lot. The backdrop was super cute. I love how that orange popped against the black. And the menu was so DragCon to me. I've got to give props to either her or art department, whoever was responsible for creating all of the visuals, because the props were solid as hell, especially after coming from that bomb drop that was Venus. That being said, I hated the costume. I'm not a fan of those table skirts, and I don't really like the breast lines. It was all a decision that was made. But I think she did a great job overall. She incorporated her vaping trick, which is a big part of her branding and something that people know her for. And I think she was giving auntie vibes. Come and drink and party with me and then spill the tea and let's gossip and I'll give you advice on how to make your life better. That was a fun route that really nobody else took. And I think offering drinks for a challenge like this was a good direction to go in. Especially since the whole vibe is a speakeasy. You gotta have alcohol. My 2 cents in the matter are, if you keep drinking, you can't get a hangover. And Arizona clearly believes that too because she gave a hangover care package that had brandy, another shot of brandy, and then another shot of brandy? No, vodka. That was freaking hysterical. That was a great setup to a good punchline. It's a nice bait and switch that I always respond well to. And no one else thought about a kit, which is such important marketing at DragCon. When you go there, you want to buy the package, the thing. Like you look and say, that has the shirt and the lip gloss and it has the perfume. That's the bulk deluxe kit. I want that. And I feel like she completely matched the brief of charisma meets commerce, taking her unique brand and putting that with something you can buy. Nobody else thought about that. In my opinion, she did the best in this challenge and was the very clear winner. And at this point, I was feeling bummed that Suki was never going to get a win this season because this felt like it was her week. But then Arizona came out and knocked it out of the park. I think if Suki had something realistic to sell, like you could actually buy that design, take it home in a sketchbook of your own, I think that would be one thing that would just bring her up a notch higher than Arizona. Just like 0.6 higher, because they were neck and neck point-wise for me. And then on the runway, Arizona is redoing her Animal Kingdom couture look. Jesus Christ. This was so glam and upscaled, but also extremely kitschy. I loved that orange neon with the animal print. It was bombastic and it had a lot to say. And I loved the twist on the Mugler inspiration. Even the hair had details of the animal print, and that's impressive as hell to me. It was high fashion, it was couture, it was a true glow up from the original look. This was the hardest slay on the runway for me. And I wasn't even expecting this level of glam from Arizona. Most of her package has been more camp than it has been glam. And so this was impressive to me on that end. And last is Kiana in the challenge looking crazy. Nuts, psycho, insane. I did not care for the look at all. It was super distracting and I'm guessing it was meant to reference the backdrop which had the spikes and then her spiking the food with her nail and then the acupuncture. For why? This was the least focused concept in the entire room. And I think she got a little too hung up on the wordplay of it all. Acupuncture with a K, chiropractor with a K. It was all way too much, which has kind of been her narrative all season, that she is doing too much. None of it worked for me, and then when she asked them what to do next, girl, it was giving Spicy Sunshine, sitting down and waiting for those minutes to finish clocking in that interview challenge. And it was uncomfortable. And Precious and Sasha were doing their very best to try and be present and give something and try to keep the set moving. But even they could not stop this boat from sinking. Sinking with a K. And on the runway, she was doing her fair couture look. This was quite literally everything in my opinion. Once again, a bit too much. And really it was more just embellishment on what was already there before. But I quite liked it. I love these looks that are just a massive statement piece that look like they could be a pride float. It was a showstopper and I loved it. The faces that were all over the skirt were so cool. It was all very loud and interesting to me. It was an eventful slay. I liked the workroom conversation about Jiggly. It made me emotional, and I can only assume that in the timeline of everything, this is when information of her passing would have started getting distributed to the world, and therefore the workroom would have been hearing about it. I can only assume that a couple weeks ago when Mama Pao said we love you Jiggly and got teary, that may have been the time right when she passed and all the close friends knew about it. Because from what I gathered on social media, she had passed several days before anybody else knew. Like her closest of friends knew, but then the world didn't know for several days. And so I can only assume that this was the official announcement date or close to. And I really appreciated that they had this tribute moment to honoring her memory. Arizona ultimately wins the challenge, which I completely agreed with. But Gagger, there's a twist, because Suki also wins. I honestly think this was totally justified because this was Suki's week to win. And had the parameters of the tops and bottoms not changed, Suki totally would have been top 2. I don't know which of her or Arizona would have won that lip sync, but I think the results would have been the same. Since we are coming up on the finale, I did promise a couple weeks ago that I would do a rejudging of this season, so if you're interested in that, keep an eye out, because I think honestly, some things might have been a little different by now in another universe. The bottom two are Venus and Kiana, which I think was correct. There was no way Brigading was going to be in the bottom. She wasn't that bad in the challenge or on the runway. She was the definition of safe this week. And the lip sync song is Race Car. Kiana was at a physical disadvantage because of how big her costuming was, but I think she circumvented that well and moved her body in an interesting way. I wasn't getting bored of her movements, and I thought they were interesting and kept me plugged in and engaged. I like that she swept that entire floor with her body and didn't allow the bulk of her costume to prevent her from moving. Her articulation was captivating to me, and I saw what they were doing. They used Brigading's confessional to make us think that Kiana was doing too much of the same thing. But if anyone in that room was doing too much of the same thing, it was Venus. She was parking and barking, which for anyone that doesn't know what that means, it's when you stand in one spot and just open your mouth and bark. Her hair was in her face often, she didn't do a ton, and it lends to what I said last week. Venus does her best lip syncs when she can be funny and campy. And this was not the right number for her in my opinion. And I think she was being more repetitive than Kiana was. But let's call a spade here. Kiana has the worst track record of everyone in this room. She has the most bottom placements and has been the most inconsistent since week 2. Whereas Venus has won quite a few challenges and her bottom placement last week was just incidental. This simply was not Venus's time to go, it was Kiana's. And again, I think if the top 2 had been Suki and Arizona, despite who won, I think that Kiana would have been out regardless. At this late stage of the game, your track record really matters, and it doesn't matter that Kiana, I think, did better in that lip sync. She doesn't have the sauce to go all the way to the end. But I did love her yelling, "Please, I'm a star" on her way out, because that was a great reference. Next week's challenge is a remix, and Marina is here, which I'm so excited about. I've gotta say, I very much doubt that we're gonna whittle this down to a top 3. I get a feeling that either next week's challenge is going to be a ceremonial top 2 or a no one goes home bottom 2. It would be odd to bring this to a top 3 when that's very much out of the Philippines norm. I think these 4 are officially our finalists. So who are you rooting for? My money right now is on Brigading. I think it's her game to win. She's been getting a lot of the same critiques that she's a star, that she is the moment this season. I think Arizona has had a lot of ups and downs, but she's been on an upward climb the last couple weeks. Whereas someone like Venus, I think, started really strong, and much like her trajectory in season 1, the judges have been kind of getting bored of her. And while I love Suki to death, and I think she is a fab moment on this cast, I just don't think she's got the right stuff to be the winner, and I don't think her track record is conducive to winning. I think there's a possibility that she could have a shot, but it's so slim. Brigading would have to fail so badly in the last 2 challenges to justify her not winning. And I just don't see that when there's a remix challenge coming. Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see y'all on the flip.